We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Welcome back to another great episode of Granite State Live. As you can see here in studio...
Good start, right?
Oh my God.
Have a sip.
As you can see here in studio, I do not have Keith Hansen sitting with me today. I have the great benefactor of GraniteGrok sitting here. How you doing today, sir?
Good to see you, Julian. It's nice to have a chance to sit and talk, and it's great to be here on Granite State Live, which, of course, we've been supporting from behind the scenes since it started way back in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it's been a bang-up year so far. It is like fantastic guests, great conversations, great information, great data as we, go down the rabbit hole of everything that's going on in society and, try to distill for people the stuff that they're not getting from mainstream media. And to be honest, the stuff they're not getting from the influencer class either.
That's true. And one of the reasons that a lot of Republicans don't like Granite State Live or Grok Talk or GraniteGrok or any of these, your podcast, is because you come out here and you challenge everything based on some really basic ideas. Principles first, before party, before people. And, we filter everything through that, and we're not always going to get it right. But the point is to make people ask questions, to look at it from a different angle, to say, hey, I never really thought about it like that. Let's talk about it. Slurp, slurp.
And the big thing is to ask the right questions, right? Because if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers. And too often, we tune in to listen to influencers give their opinion, and it really ends up being a cheerleading fest, right? You like this influencer versus that influencer, and we tune in too often to when we get the news to get the red meat. We want to see you attack the other side of the aisle. So you become the unpopular guy when you're challenging people to look within their own ranks and be like, is what I'm doing effective? Am I affecting change in my own community? Are the people who represent me, are they doing the right thing? Are our fellow conservatives, Republicans, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Or are they a part of the problem too?
I would agree that they are. It's human nature, right? Mm-hmm. You get into politics, maybe for the best of intentions. We were talking about it before the program. Yep. And then, we've been talking about it forever. You've probably been talking about it forever. You go and you find a good candidate and you talk to him and you usher him along and, you think, this is the guy. This is a good guy. I can get him down to D.C. or I can get him into Concord or I can send him someplace and he's going to do something good. Yep. And then, you send him to you get him elected. You're excited. You're like, wow, holy crap. I got somebody elected that I think is going to make a difference. And then you send him down there and they get the Georgetown flu. Mm-hmm. The system eats them up. The machine chews them up. And that's the Honey Nut Cheerios bee. Oh, you got him. Nobody's allergic, I hope. Is he?
He's behind you.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
I'm going to get him.
We're under air assault. There's
We got
a bee.
two of 'em.
There's a
Hold
bee
up.
in the studio. All right, just if he bites me, I'm going to be pissed. Anyway, we got a lot of good guests for you today. If you want to be part of the show, 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-8255 or TALK. See, I'm not Keith Hansen. He would have said that the right way the second time. I'm definitely not Keith Hansen, but I am filling in. I'm trying to do the best I can while Julian tries to kill the bees. Anyway, we have a couple of different guests on for you today. We're going to be bringing them on 7:38 and 8:30, so please stick around because we're going to have a lot of great conversations today. But before we do that, we're going to talk about this stuff. Actually, whatever it is comes to mind is what we're going to talk about.
Well, so we have these great candidates who run, and a lot of candidates believe in doing the right thing, or they believe that they want to get into politics to affect change. Of course, you have the people who run because of its ego. You have a lot of people who, you get addicted to the process, the miniature amount of fame that you get, it surprisingly, as much as most people would think that, it takes absurd amounts of money to buy most people off. It really doesn't. It takes an expensive glass of scotch, a cigar, a $400 Wagyu beef steak in a lot of cases. And when you're eating that steak, all of a sudden you find yourself sitting across from lobbyists. And you get addicted to the lifestyle. Because for a lot of people who run for office, if you've never been a part of that lifestyle is enough. Just getting a taste of it, you're like, oh, man. But the real corruption doesn't come in that. The real corruption comes in the process of what it takes to get elected. The D.C. Beltway crowd, they have this cookie-cutter methodology that it takes to win a campaign. And they tell you have to change. And little bit by little bit, you'll have a good guy who believes in doing the right thing, and then they'll take a piece out of him. They'll be like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't say that. No, you can't wear that. And what I always did when I worked with candidates was, I want you to be you. Now, there's a better way to say what you're talking about, because if you're a political nerd like some of us are, some of the stuff we say may go over people's heads. So you got to speak to the level of the people that you're talking to. One of the things that I saw when Vivek was up here was Vivek was often enough speaking so high over people's heads that people are like, dude, you need to tone down. You actually sound pretentious because you're using a lot of big words. And for the vast majority of people in here, we don't have multiple PhDs. And I kept telling it, like, dial it down a little bit, dude. We can handle complex subjects, but we can't handle your nickel words every 5 seconds. And but the DC Beltway crowd does it the opposite. They'll take the parts of you that people love, that the average person loves, but they don't like it because they have their script of what you're supposed to look like. The cookie cutter white knight altar boy. And I've always said the reason why Donald Trump is as popular as he is because he's not a cookie cutter white knight altar boy. When you challenge him on the things that would have destroyed most Republican candidates, he goes, so what? Like, oh my God, he's got half a dozen different children by three different babies' mamas. He might as well be an NBA player or a rapper. And I'm like, and he's like, so what? Oh, he slept with porn stars, and you wish you could.
Well, he's a disruptor.
Yeah.
And like you said, the same thing happens. You send them in, and then, they don't just take little pieces. Mm-hmm. They say, you need to make this deal to get to here.
Yep.
And then to here, and to here, and to here.
And that's the process.
If you want to have any influence, which is what you got elected to do. Yep. And by the time you find yourself at the end of whatever that is, and that may never end, obviously, the longer you're there, the longer that gets. You can't do anything because anything you wanted to do, nobody down there wants you doing, and you've sold yourself in tiny pieces and given little bits of yourself away, and now there's nothing left. So and even the people who elected you, when you were that good guy, they don't want anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah, and part of it, so you do it during the election cycle in order to win. Then once you get there, you do it to get your committee seats. And then you do it to get into leadership. And then once you're in leadership, you get it to be the guy. Because now you want to run for president. Now you want to be in the cabinet. Now you want to do all that stuff. There's always that one next rung on the ladder that you want to climb. And in order to get on that next rung of the ladder, you have to sacrifice another piece of yourself.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we're not popular. We're not popular because we're not doing that. We refuse to do it. And we sleep well at night, ladies and gentlemen, knowing that no matter what you throw at us, we have our principles, and they make us very comfortable. And we can defend them because they're right in the Constitution. They're in their state constitution. For the most part, they're in the Republican Party platform, at least in New Hampshire. And all you're really doing, you or I or Julian or, Keith, is saying, these are the rules you said you were going to follow, and you're not. And that's all I'm saying. So what's the problem?
For the vast majority of people, if you took a principled position, they may not agree with you, but they'll respect the principled position. And for a lot of people in our daily lives, we're just looking for solutions, right? So it's not about whether or not you can verbatim spit off portions of the Constitution.
I cannot.
Or whether you can verbatim read recite the Federalist Papers. For most people, and it's like, yeah, intellectually that's impressive. And it's like, oh, wow, this guy's really smart. He knows his shit.
Well, he's got good memory. I sure as hell don't have that. So, I mean, I something will just jump out and I'll be like, oh, yeah. And I'll grab it and I'll go, I'm going to beat this to death for 5 minutes.
But the issue is, do you have the conceptual understanding of what you're supposed to be representing? And if you have the conceptual understanding, can you apply it? That's where your solutions come from. And the vast majority of people, we don't want to be involved in political gangbanging. It's not Democrats versus Republicans. When I start off conversations building a rapport with the person I'm talking to, we have great conversations. We can talk solutions, no matter where they land on the political spectrum. As soon as we start off with I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, or I'm a conservative and you're a progressive, now we're at each other's throats because we started off with now I'm taking accountability. I'm taking ownership of everything my side has ever done, and you're taking ownership of everything your side has ever done. Now we're going to battle with each other.
Or more accurately, everything you think my side has done.
Yes. And that, unfortunately, the vast majority of people aren't informed enough to even be able to have that conversation. So it ends up being a battle of who's recited their talking points the best. Who's memorized the talking points the best? Unfortunately, that's where the conversations with a lot of the influencers go, is surface little talking point battles. That's one of the reasons why I've never been a big fan of PragerU. Not because principled-wise what they're saying is wrong, but how they go about it is a battle of talking points. So I'm like, oh, you could have got really deep into the nuance of this, and we would be having an entirely different conversation about solutions. You would have won most people over. But instead, you're still responding to the narrative of the left, which means you're still playing their game, and you're not talking solutions. You're just political gangbanging.
Yeah, or drive-by shooting, I think, is another popular term for that, and it happens a lot, and we do it. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. You end up singing to the choir.
Yeah.
But while you're doing it, I think if you can find a way to put a different angle on it, not a spin, but to move the camera a little, even just a little, and
Make
say,
people look at it
did you look at it this way? And then see where it takes them. And sometimes in comments, people are like, oh, my God, I never thought of it that way. And sometimes they're like, and they just jump back on the old bandwagon. And it's just the way it goes. But, we try to protect that debate. We try to protect it so that people can watch it happen. It's like I tell people on social media, a lot of times you're not there fighting with the person you disagree with. You're there so other people can watch how you manage that conversation.
Yes.
And I don't spend a lot of time on social media because it is a hellhole, and you get lost in there, and huge chunks of your life just vanish, and then you're like, oh my God, what happened? Did I do anything right? Did I accomplish anything? Or did I just waste 3 hours having beers and talking on Facebook or X or something like that? So I have built in breaks just because of the scheduling and the nature of what I do as a publisher, and having to curate content and edit other people's stuff, that, if I'm on it for more than 5 minutes, I'm gone, done. I
basically ditched social media over the last, I want to say, for 4 months. I just sort of walked away from a lot of it.
I bet you feel better too.
I do. I feel so much better. My mental health is better. My physical health is better. I'm not as stressed. I sleep better. And part of it was I really distilled everything down to what is effective.
Right.
When I'm having these debates online, one, am I convincing anyone? Am I changing anyone's minds? Are we looking at things differently? Are we talking about solutions? Or is it just political gangbanging? Is it my side versus your side? And if it's my side versus your side, I have no interest in that conversation. Because I find it to be wholly unproductive.
I when people tell me they're sad, I say, have you stopped watching TV news?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good place to start. And social media is the other place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Stop scrolling.
Yeah. Find something, read a book.
Mm-hmm.
Spend some time with your family.
I've had this conversation in my household a lot. We've been talking about, like, stop doom scrolling.
Oh,
There's nothing good online.
Oh, my God. I got to find something that'll piss me off.
Mm-hmm. Let me find that tweet, or let me find that post that's going to piss me off, or let me go argue with somebody. In most cases, it's not like you're arguing with somebody who's going to affect change. You're just arguing because you're angry. And what does that accomplish? In a lot of cases, we could be better served by just being active in our local communities. Instead of scrolling on Facebook about how pissed off you are about what's going on in your local school, go to a school board meeting. Make your voice heard to the people who are actually doing stuff. And if they're not willing to listen, then run for school board. The investment's not that high. And it's less than how often people doom scroll online.
If you would like to inject your reality into this conversation before our first guest arrives, 833-603-8255, Granite State Live. It's still Tuesday, October 14th. Yes, because yesterday was Columbus Day. And we're glad you're watching, and we hope you call in and join us. So a lot of things going on. You know, I'm on the board of the 603 Alliance, and sometimes I speak at events and trainings and things like that. And I specifically remember talking before, I don't know if it was the 2020 election or the 22 midterms, how, may you live in interesting times. And I was like, I'd like to live in less interesting times.
Yes.
Just for a little while, because, I was a quality manager for a circuit board company for a number of years, and my job was to make my job go away. Mm-hmm. My job was to make it so easy for people to create quality product that I didn't need to do anything to check on them. I felt the same way about politics. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just get to this heavenly place where I got up in the morning and I didn't have anything to write about? Mm-hmm. I could just drink my coffee and pick up a book and go out on my deck with my dog and sit in the sun.
But the funny part is what we do, it requires an eternal vigilance. So we'll never, as much as we would love to be able to work ourselves out of a job to where what we have to say and what we do isn't needed anymore, it'll always be needed, because there'll always be one more shit politician.
Well, as long as there's two people, you will have politics.
Yes.
And so there's no way away from it. And, like I said last week, I made my peace with it a long time ago. I don't get angry about it ever. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't incense me. I had people say, Bill O'Brien once, he walked up to me at an event and he goes, "Oh, there's Steve. He's always angry." And I'm like, I'm never angry, dude. I might write that way sometimes, but that's just because it's fun, and I get to be snarky. Sometimes
the snark is required because people don't often get it when you say it nice.
No, that's why I call progressives troglodytes. I mean, you just have to. Yeah, I mean, obviously because of Alinsky and ridicule. A natural reaction is, well, I will ridicule you back because it's fun and my readers like it, and it annoys you, and then you say dumb things, and then I have more things to write about. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that is a bit of that political gangbanging, but sometimes to get the message across, you need to break a few eggs.
Well, being flamboyant in order to get the message across, I don't see it as being counterproductive. I see that as a tactic in order to make people wake up and listen. One of my good friends is Sunny Johnson. She's a host of SiriusXM Patriot on Saturdays, and she is always trying to make conservatives uncomfortable because she's like, you don't do anything when you're comfortable. You go home, you kick up your feet, and you drink a beer. Well, I'm here to make you uncomfortable so that you will think about things differently, so that you will not be able to be manipulated, so that you will get active, so that you will change things. It's a republic if we can keep it, right? So let's make sure we keep it. So the uncomfortable conversations sometimes are necessary. The issue is, are you saying the flamboyant thing for the purpose of saying the flamboyant thing just to get the clicks? And unfortunately, there's too many people in the influencer space that do that. And it happens in the news more often now than it ever did. It's what weird and out there thing can we say today to make social media melt down tomorrow so we get the ratings?
Right. And, I have to be honest, I hate clickbait headlines. Epic Times has them all the time. I get these email newsletters, and I see the headline, and I go, I see what it says. I know what I think it means, but when I click it, I know it's going to be something else.
Yeah.
And I try really hard not to do that on GraniteGrok, but it does happen sometimes, and it's the snark. You know, it really is the snark. You have to be like, I have to use this headline. I can't do it. I'm not Jim Hofting it. I'm not, not breaking this blessed explosive, you know, and he did that, and it made his website huge. So good on him. Right. And he still does it. And he has been extremely successful, and he breaks tons of stories, and he can pay actual reporters to do actual research. But I just can't bring myself to go there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's one of those principle things or if I'm just being snobby in a different way.
I think it's a principle thing. I mean, I can't do it either. There's a lot of stuff that my fellow influencers do all the time. I can't do it. I can't say the flamboyant thing just to get people to tune in. Every time I've tried, I get the ick afterwards where I'm like, I didn't have to go down that route.
I got to take a shower.
Yeah, and I used to do it so I would write one post that would be purely informative and see how good it does, and then I would write another post where I would start off trying to trigger you and then follow up with information afterwards, because I know that's how social media works. And unfortunately, triggering people and then following up with information and manage to get more information out there than just giving people facts and data.
No, William Shakespeare knew the groundlings wanted to be appeased with certain levels of guttural humor, and it's human nature. Really, no matter how hard you try, people want that stuff.
We want drama.
Yeah.
We want the drama, and that is part of the reason why reality TV is so popular.
Oh, God, I hate it. But yes, you're right.
People want to tune in. They want to see the train wreck, and it makes them feel better about their own lives, because my life's not as bad as this. Thank God.
Soap operas, yeah.
And unfortunately, we live in a society where that has become the way that we engage with each other. And it's been, honestly, I think social media has probably been about the worst thing for society ever.
I have to wonder if you go back in time, if everybody thought that Gutenberg's little invention ruined everything. The same way social media. I mean, every time you have one of these giant, and AI, of course, is coming up. Our next guest wrote a book about it, and we'll be talking to him about some stuff like that. But AI is another thing. It's the next generation of, oh, holy crap, how is this going to screw up the society?
Well, it depends on how people use it. Like the way... When social media was a way for us all to connect with each other,
excuse me,
wasn't a bad thing. When social media became a way that degrades how we connect with each other, now it's become wholly destructive. Like, men and women are at each other's throats, black and whites, Jews and Christians, Jews and Muslims. It's like, pick a team. They're going at it with somebody on social media, and they're not having productive conversations. There's no nuance in it. There's no data. There's no solutions being discussed. It's just more gangbanging. It's more, how can we get clicks? How can we be rambunctious? How can we? And unfortunately, one of the things that's what you get when you monetize just straight engagement. Just pure engagement. When you monetize just pure engagement.
And people are tribal by nature, and then the algorithms drive you into the tribe they think you belong to, and you just go right in there, and you walk in and you go, hey, we all agree. We don't like those people over there. So, or that idea, and I think that's fine. If you want to dislike somebody, that's great, but be a decent human being.
Yeah. We don't have to be at each other's throats. We can disagree amicably. I don't see any reason why I have to hate every Democrat out there or hate every progressive. As a matter of fact, I know multiple progressives I have great conversations with on a regular basis, not because we agree on so much, but because we're willing to have a dialogue from a place of trying to understand each other versus trying to score points on each other.
And I think people have forgotten that there is literally a million other things to talk about than politics, even though the system and the culture has systemically driven everything into a political ditch.
Yeah.
And even sports now, you can't, it's almost impossible to avoid, but if you really want to try, you can. I mean, I know people that I meet out in the world who don't know what I do, who are Democrats, who I have great conversations with all the time. Now, if they knew what I do, I don't know how that would go. That'd be up to them. They would have to make a decision. But, COVID taught us that an awful lot of people who you thought you loved and cared about got really, really mad if you didn't agree with them on the masking or the distancing or the shots or any of the rest of it. And, as that starts to unravel, it creates even more uncomfortable conversations because you want to be like, well, I was right, but you don't want to be like, I was right. Ha, ha, ha. A lot of people do want to do that. We share a lot of memes like that because it's kind of fun to poke. But, when you're talking at a personal level and with people in real spaces out in the world, that's not how you behave.
No.
Nobody, if you were brought up to behave that way, you need to learn some new things. Here comes the honey nut bee. He's going to land on my hat.
Yep, just sitting there.
All right, that's fine. He's going to crawl underneath my hat. I'll just leave him there. As long as he doesn't bite me. He's crawling on my face now. All right, we're getting close to the end of the segment. I have a bee on my face. He's crawling around. I'm just going to let him do it. Live on Granite State Live, it's the Honey Nut Cheerios bee crawling down my face.
That is distracting.
Talk about good television, if that's what it is. Now he's on my neck. I'm going to let him go. Because if I don't swat at him, I could kill him, I suppose, but I can't really see him. So just don't go in my eye, man. Don't go in my eye.
Or try to climb in your ear or in your headphones.
Yeah, well, I have it. As long as it's not a Democrat bee, I guess I'm all right.
Well, all right. So after this break, we're gonna have another fantastic guest on. We're gonna have Mark Beckman. He's gonna be talking with us about Israel and Hamas and the peace agreement that Donald Trump just got. So, of course, Donald Trump is over here trying to create peace, and he's not going to get any credit for it because why? We're political gangbanging. That's what it is.
I know. And tomorrow morning from the AM update on GraniteGrok, I'm going to talk about this a little bit. But we're going to have a much better conversation in a couple of minutes.
Yep. All right. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll see you in just a few.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve MacDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Ballone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive.
Sometimes we forget we live in one of the most beautiful states in the country. This summer, vacation right here and discover your new.
This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I don't know. Yeah, you just did that. Look at that. It's so sad.
All right. As we said, we're going to have a fantastic guest on this hour. We're going to have Mark Beckman to talk about the Israel-Hamas war and the peace agreement that Donald Trump is getting signed. And you know what? Of course, like anything else, he's not going to get any credit for it because how dare he? You know, Trump has been nominated for multiple Nobel Peace Prizes for different peace deals he's gotten done around the world, and yet every single time they refuse to give it to him, not because the peace deal wasn't significant, not because the accomplishment wasn't significant, but because it's him.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw a TikTok, I think somebody sent me, and the guy was like, geez, you know, they were protesting and taking over college campuses and having damn near riots, you know, over this whole Free Palestine thing. And, you know, it's been a couple hours since it happened, and there's nothing from any of them.
No, because for them, it's the left has a group of people who will protest just about anything as long as it is anti-Republican, anti-conservative, anti-anything. The funny thing about those protests was that they got so rabidly anti-Israel that they were attacking their own.
Oh, yeah. And they do eat their own. And, of course, nobody's paying them to protest about, yay, we got peace, you know. And
No.
so there's no paycheck, there's no protest.
No, because you can't monetize that, and you can't use that to break down society to get a proletariat revolution.
Right, and Republicans aren't going to pay protesters to go out and go, yay, peace.
Right?
So,
Hell, we won't pay door knockers.
that's right, exactly. You got to volunteer. That's part of the problem. We don't have money for that. We just don't want to spend it on that. And like you said earlier, you know, you want to just kind of sit on your couch and have a beer and maybe smoke a cigar if that's what you're into. And you're just like, oh, okay, great, peace, excellent. It's in the Middle East. I'm not there. I don't really care about it, but it's in the TV and it's in the paper and it's online. So I guess I pay a little bit of attention and I move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the biggest problem on the right now is apathy. Well, I've always seen that. Well, our reactionary posture, we are always reacting to everything that the left does. We're reacting to their narratives. Most of our narratives are counter narratives, and we're always reacting, or we're apathetic to get up and be proactive about doing
Well,
anything.
remember what you said in the first segment. A lot of it is they think their job is done. Remember, we got Trump elected.
Yep.
He's there. I can take a break now.
And that's
of
not
course,
how it works.
as you and I both know, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, there is no break.
No.
You're always on. So.
You know, eternal vigilance is the price to pay for freedom. All right, so up next, our guest is Mark Beckman. He is going to discuss the Israel-Hamas war. Mark Beckman is author of Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. He's the CEO of an award-winning advertising agency, DMA United. Beckman's show, Some Future Day, examines technology, culture, and law. How are you doing today, sir? Thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, it's great to see you guys. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good.
It's a beautiful day.
Good. We had bees in here, and now they're gone. That's nice.
Well, I got to tell you, I was listening to you before I joined, and I couldn't agree with you more. I live here in New York City, and we're so bananas. We're electing Mamdani, literally a communist anti-Semite with no experience in running a business, let alone a major entity like New York City, as mayor. So I couldn't agree with your comments right before I joined. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I lay that totally at the feet of the New York GOP. I lay that at their feet because
all five of them?
Yeah. I mean, had we gotten up and, you know, got organized and built out the infrastructure in order to start getting candidates elected, and I mean, change the way you do things if you know that what you're doing is ineffective. So had we done that, I think we could have put up a candidate or backed a candidate that would have been able to go toe-to-toe with them. Part of the reason why Mamdani and so many of these socialists are becoming so popular is because they're talking about the issues that the average person cares about. Granted, their solutions are going to make it worse, but they're still using populist rhetoric, and the vast majority of people are not hyper-idealistic. The vast majority of the population are populist.
You're entirely right. It's interesting. I was having a conversation recently, and we were analyzing who voted for Mamdani in the primaries. And what the data shows is that it's predominantly 30-year-old professionals who are white and Asian in New York City. And I started to think about like what is that? Like, what does that equate to? And most of these people, if they're professionals, they could be lawyers and advertising, architects, accountants. They're probably earning somewhere in the range of $130,000 to $150,000 a year. And the truth is that the cost of living here in New York City is just out of control. The government has just failed at a local, state, and before President Trump came in, at a federal level too. And as a result, New Yorkers are feeling it. So these people are literally, I say, we're living in the age of dumb. They're dumb enough, the professionals, to think that if they could save a little money, free buses, lower price of food, stabilizing rent, the result will be what, $20,000, $30,000 more in their bank account. But little do they know that crime is going to increase and everything's going to fall apart. All of their little government safety nets are going to go away. It's going to be complicated. Socialism and communism don't work. I'm just hopeful that we're not the victims of it here in New York City, because it will just be, it's already a mess here in New York City. It will just be a million times worse.
Hey, I kept saying, hey, if you looked at the primaries and you looked at the votes, Black people were not voting for Mamdani. They were voting for Eric Adams. They were voting for Andrew Cuomo. It's really sad. I was having a conversation with Sonny Johnson this 2 weeks ago.
I love
It's
her.
really sad that Andrew Cuomo is now the number one person defending capitalism in the United States against a socialist.
Excuse me.
And
I did
there's
joke.
not a GOP candidate doing it. And like, that is just beyond me.
It's a race to the bottom. Curtis Sliwa, as much as I love him, shouldn't really be a candidate. He has no chance. He always runs. He always loses. He has no chance. And, to your point earlier, GOP, we should put somebody up that's strong. There are so many business leaders that can appeal to New York City people. And the reality is that we don't even consider it. We're throwing Curtis Sliwa out there again. Personally, I wanted to see Mayor Adams go forward. I don't think he did an exceptional job, but the truth is he's better than all of the other candidates. And, since he's come a little bit closer to where we are politically, it's been great. But the reality is that we just don't have any great options here right now. That's the truth.
The bee's
Which-
back. Now he's on my glasses.
Speaking of populism, we were having a discussion prior to you coming on about how, on college campuses, they were protesting the Israel-Hamas war. They were getting wildly anti-Semitic. And yet there's silence now that we're finally getting a peace deal.
Quickly, it's interesting. My background, although I own an advertising agency, as you mentioned, I've been teaching at NYU Stern. I've been teaching an MBA class for 7 years. In fact, one of my students in the last semester that I taught, she was Israeli. She lost friends at Nova. And, once October 7th hit, I took my show that you mentioned, Some Future Day, and I said, I'm going to feature some people that come from that world. I had the former director of Mossad, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, an IDF commander. I had 3 Israeli hostage families, as well as a freed Israeli hostage. And I've become friendly with these people, and I know these people. And the reality is that we have an anti-Semitism issue here that's not just permeating our academic institutions, New York University, Columbia University, UCLA, and beyond, but it's hitting our entire ecosystem. It's in government, it's in the corporate level, it's in academia, and it's hard to believe President Trump is truly the best at trying to push forward or trying to protect the Jewish people, not just the students, the administrators, the teachers, and beyond. But that issue is going on, and it's just, again, we're living in the age of dumb. These people think it's good to align with terrorists, with people that literally would be happy to come and kill them. My favorite part of it is looking at the different subgroups that are using intersectionality to promote the concept of free Palestine. Most of these subgroups, I'm sure you would agree, would be killed themselves if they wanted to go visit Gaza this weekend. So
100%. And
Yeah.
I also found it interesting. I watched this because I'm always looking at things from perspective on the right. I started seeing the anti-Semitism pop up on the right as well. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And it was the Jew-spiracy stuff. And it was like the Jews are running the world. They're running the central banks. They're running culture, Hollywood, music industry, all of it. And I was like, a Marxist is a Marxist first. They are Jewish, Christian, Muslim second. Everything is second to Marxism. That is their religion. And we're getting it in. I saw this common thread being popping up that Jews were Marxist because they were Jews. And I was like, that is just beyond me. It doesn't even fit into the Marxist lexicon.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of issues. Anti-Semitism hit our country hard for a long time. If you go back and look at the politics of it, it was the Democrats that didn't allow the Jews to enter the United States during World War II. I'm sure you're aware of that. But the reality is a lot of the industries where Jews are, kind of dominating have been established because Jews couldn't go anywhere else. So they went and created Hollywood because they weren't allowed in other industries. They became lawyers and doctors because there was nowhere else to go. They created their own ecosystem. And now there are other classes of individuals who are receiving, honestly, the discrimination similar to the Jews did years ago. Look at the education piece. You saw the Supreme Court case surrounding Chinese individuals in Harvard University recently. That's what the Jews went through 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's the same exact thing, but now it's the Chinese people's turn over at Harvard. So, anti-Semitism is real. What's freaking me out, to be honest with you, is that it's just so mainstream now. It's people are having trouble distinguishing free speech from anti-Semitism. They're having trouble saying like, oh, it's good for these students to come out and cheer for the death to the Jews in the name of free speech at Columbia University. And the reality is that it's just you're aligning with people who have killed, raped, beheaded, and burned individuals 2 years ago. It's time to move on. We need to fix this. And President Trump, yesterday was just incredible. It's like absolutely incredible what President Trump did. But yet those people still wearing the blue jersey can't admit that what President Trump did is remarkable.
It's because it's all about political gangbanging. It's nothing else. They're not willing to give a win to the other side or admit when they're wrong, which is one of the main things I think is
That's
bad.
the B.
Yeah. One of the main things I think is bad with politics in America today is we've gotten to a point where we're not able to call a spade a spade. Something is good or bad regardless of who does it. It is good or bad regardless of whether it's my team that does it or your team that does it. If Ro Khanna decides to go out and support term limits, I'm like, hey, good on you, man. You want to get rid of how money is spent in D.C. or get rid of the backroom deals and stuff like that? I have no problem with that. I don't care whether it's a progressive doing it or a conservative doing it. As long as it gets done, that's a good thing for America to get rid of all the backroom deals and the corruption. That's always a good thing. What I find interesting about this is Trump is going to be nominated for another Nobel Peace Prize, and they're not going to give it to him just because it's him.
Unfortunately, I see your point. I'm hoping that will not happen. I think it would be insane if that happens. I've heard, though, as recently as yesterday, that there's going to be a significant group with strong ties to the Middle East that's going to be creating a new type of peace award to compete with Nobel, a modern award. Of course, Nobel has the legacy, but at some point we have to look at these institutions and give them the respect that they deserve. They need to be ended, and we need to innovate and be more honest. Your point bothers me so much that people just vote and align with the color of their jersey. We've lost critical thinking. We've lost the ability to do the work, do the reading, figure out right from wrong, figure out what's appropriate, and people can't. They can't create their own opinion anymore. It's possible for someone like me, for example. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Republican. I have been for a long time, but I don't align with every type of conservative principle. I have, a different set of circumstances perhaps than somebody similar with similar demographics, white middle-aged guy, but in totally different geography, maybe, 3 hours north of New York City. Maybe that individual doesn't have a family like I do. So my priorities help me figure out what my policy where my policy alignment stands. But most people are just lazy, slothful pigs, and they're quicker to align with the color of a jersey because they think that's the right thing to do versus actually having some critical thinking, applying some knowledge and doing some research and saying, here's the right thing to do for me.
It's interesting that President Trump, of all people, is actually the guy who's kind of breached that wall just a little bit. I mean, he's attracted some independents. He's attracted some Democrats. He's got gay supporters. He's got black supporters. He's got moderate left supporters. He's literally begun to grow the tent on the Republican side, contrary to what we know is that it's this Jersey issue, right? And I think that's fascinating. And part of that, obviously, is his appeal, and it certainly has to have something to do with what's going on in the Middle East, because he's accomplishing things that nobody else has really been able to do.
I think that in particular, Trump looks at voters the same way a businessman would. You're a client. You tell me you have a problem. I have a product to sell. I have a solution to your problem. Why would I tell you I don't want to solve your problem just because you're not of the typical demographic that we typically go after?
I completely agree. The other thing that I think is really interesting about President Trump is that he's all business. And people criticize him for that. But, when he's going all over the world, more than $1 trillion in revenue that he brought through the deal with the GCC surrounding AI across KSA, UAE, and Qatar, all these different deals that he's putting in place. When there's prosperity, all of the other freedoms tend to follow. Let's be honest. If you're making money, you're happy. And with that comes freedom of speech, the right of assembly, freedom of religion, and beyond. And he's focused that way. That's the essence of Abraham Accords, right? It's not about religion. It's like, hey, let's play together. Let's create financial value together. And let's protect each other. And our people, our next generation, our grandchildren, everybody will be better. We'll have more food security. We'll have better access to healthcare. But again, for some reason, we're living in a world today where the left will say, oh, that's capitalism. That's a bad thing. We shouldn't make any money. It's going to hurt us. Again, the age of dumb is like anti-capitalism. But capitalism, unlocking financial value across the globe, brings all the other freedoms, in my opinion.
Agreed. Capitalism is the science of making more pies and making those pies more affordable for the vast majority of people so everyone can have a slice of pie. Whereas socialism, communism, pick your leftist isms, whatever, they are the science of constantly, endlessly trying to divide the pie so that everyone gets a slice.
The same size slice?
The same size slice.
Tinier and tinier slice.
Until nobody can eat it all.
And
that's the problem.
And then there's no pie.
Yeah. I've often said...
And death.
And death. Yes, you get death.
Death, poverty, and destruction. I've often said that it is akin to trying to plug people, which are infinite variables, creating infinite numbers of variables, into a system of ones and zeros as if you can manipulate them to do whatever you want.
And you can. Yep. There we go. The engineer was messing with me. I learned this at a very early age. I started out working at McDonald's for $235 an hour, and I worked my way up into management. And they taught me a lot of really cool things, like not everybody goes to work there for the same reason. Some go there to have something to do, like older people. Some go there to make money. Some go there for the company. Some people just like working with other people. And there's like this long list of things, and you cannot know what that is.
Yep.
But if they want to do it well, welcome.
Yeah.
I think at the core, what you're talking about in that McDonald's ecosystem is individual productivity. And when an individual is productive, it doesn't necessarily mean making a fortune. Again, you laid out these different verticals of how the people within the McDonald's ecosystem could be productive. It gives them self-confidence, self-worth, and that makes them happier. And that spreads across their entire community. If you look at places like New York City right now, there are so many people that are homeless, mixed up with drugs on the street. Crime is on the rise. people aren't very productive. They're looking for government handouts. They're wrapped up in the same system. Like people in the housing projects have been relying for generations now on the same government handouts instead of like their local representative unlocking their ingenuity by saying, hey, let's make it a little easier for entrepreneurs to go out and create new businesses. Like nobody breaks out of the mold. And as a result of it, they're feeling unproductive and in turn just feeling angst. I think this is why we see so many of these protests. Like just, I think, what do we have, this, no kings protest coming up. And that's why the government shutdown is waiting for that. All those people that are going to the street, like who has that? Who has all that time? The people who aren't productive, the people who are miserable, they're going out to feel like they're a part of something because their lives are like valueless. That's what's happened. It happened in the 60s. It happened during COVID. And it's happening again right now. It's just these people are not productive people.
So this brings us to AI. You have a book talking about how AI is going to change everything. This, like social media, I am worried that AI is going to streamline things to the point where a vast swath of American society is going to find themselves with idle hands. And idle hands breed chaos.
Yeah, I think for sure. I said earlier, I referred to part of our society as lazy. And I think what's interesting with regards to AI, look at the knowledge base, for example, the corpus of information that humanity created that's training these large language models is incredible. We have access now to more information, more knowledge than ever before in history. Yet, who's going to use that? So you have the individuals who will be the knowledge haves that are going to go dive deep, and they're going to take the time to learn more. Maybe about the arts and sciences, maybe about defense, maybe about biotech. They're going to stand up new, innovative businesses, and they're going to propel humankind forward. Then you have the knowledge have-nots, the lazy people who will use AI just to quickly turn around whatever it is. Their younger generation will turn around their history report. The older generation will turn around a memorandum of law, so they could just go out and socialize with their friends. And it's going to create a divide, in my opinion, across society, the knowledge haves and the knowledge have-nots, notwithstanding the fact that the access to information is greater than ever. And I think the knowledge have-nots are going to cause chaos with that too.
I think we're already seeing it on college campuses. We're seeing studies show that kids who use ChatGPT, Grok, or any of the other AI large language models, they're getting dumber, because they're using AI to write their papers and to do the learning for them. They're not using AI to assist them in learning.
Yeah, I mean, that's so typical, right? One of my favorite clients ever was the tremendous jazz artist, Wynton Marsalis. And he was comparing to me jazz and hip hop. And the comparison was jazz is like broccoli, whereas hip hop is like candy. Mm-hmm. Jazz, it's tough to take on. You want to listen to Thelonious Monk, you got to learn. You got to do the work. Like, it's hard to get used to broccoli. You got to eat it a lot. And then finally, at some point, you say, oh, broccoli's pretty good. With hip hop, it's like candy. Watch that be. It's like candy. You could get into it quickly. It's easy. It's catchy. It's easy. I think that's seriously what we're looking at right now. We're looking at a situation where, we're going to have to do the work. We're going to have to eat our broccoli if society is going to do better.
I 100% agree. I am a student of hip hop, so I will preface this by saying mainstream hip hop is easy, catchy, and offers very little substance. But the underground stuff, the stuff that made hip hop as famous as it is, that added that fire in our souls, that was the stuff. And they were students of jazz. They were students of blues. They were students of rhythm and blues. They brought that into this new art form in a lyrical poetry that we had never seen before. Unfortunately, what we see as mainstream now is 100% right. It's like Taylor Swift. There's nothing of value there. It's just lights, camera, action.
I totally agree. And I just want to say, as it relates to hip hop, the other thing that hip hop brought back, like, I'm a kid that grew up in, New York in the 80s, the 90s. My favorite hip hop artists are Public Enemy, NWA. This is where I learned about Black history and Black culture. This is what created emotion for me. In fact, you mentioned my show, Some Future Day. One of the best episodes, like one of my biggest thrills, was to have Eazy-E's son and DJ Yella from NWA on my show. And we actually look at, you guys would love it, we break down the tension between the new artists and the old school artists. And I agree. I think what we looked at in the early days of hip hop compared to where we are today are very, very different.
Yeah, we've seen the death of artistry as the music industry has become so marketable. It's like eating Cheetos. You got the munchies, you eat a bag of Cheetos, you get absolutely no nutrition from it. As a matter of fact, it poisons you. And that's how I look at modern pop music. I look at modern hip hop. I look at modern mainstream music in general as being poison. It sounds good. There's very little content that stirs the soul. But if you look online at the stuff that's going viral, and thank God for YouTube, right? Because it's created the decentralized music industry to where the average random guy who just wants to make good music can now get famous. Dax is one of my favorite artists right now, and he had God's Eye, Joker, to Be a Man, and Dear Alcohol, all songs that went viral worldwide, and all touch on very, very serious issues that stir the soul, hit average everyday people in their daily lives. And he outdid the music industry by just not going to the masters of the universe and asking them for a slice of the pie.
And I love that. I got into country music a few years ago. I used to hate it, but I got into it for the storytelling.
Yeah.
The story where literally there's a story just laid right out. It's not just lyrics repeated. It's a beautiful thing when you're like, wow, that was so cool. And I love jazz, by the way. Absolutely love it.
But I wanted to give you an opportunity. I wanted you to plug your book and tell everyone where they could find it. And I wanted quickly for you to tell me what inspired you to write the book.
Sure. So the book is named Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. And the book is for beginners, for people in your audience who are not into tech, but they realize that artificial intelligence can change their life. It could create value for their career. It could create value in their family. It could create value in their community. If you want to learn how to use the tools today as a beginner, no tech experience, I break out after every single chapter what tools could be used. So if you're a small business owner and you want to start a business that could compete with an advertising campaign, you stand up your own advertising campaign, all of the tools are right in my book. The book went to #1 on Amazon for AI, for crypto, as well as for robotics. So it's a great book, but again, it's for beginners. It gives you the tools. And what I would recommend is, if you're interested, pick up a copy on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
All right. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and we'd definitely like to have you back on so we can go deeper into your book after I get to read a little bit more of it. And I'd like to have you back on to talk about how AI is changing things and some of these tools, because I use AI quite a bit as a learning model.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I get into like all of the industries, from fashion, art, music, sports, to defense, to government. I think you guys would get a kick out of it. I hope you have a minute to dig in and learn a little bit as to how you could get started, for those of you who aren't using it, how you could get started and make more money and improve your career.
All right. Thank you, sir. This is Mark Beckman, the author of Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Stay with us. After the break, we're going to have another great guest on for you. We're going to keep giving you great fire information, having great conversations, and we're going to keep shaking your preconceived notions right after this break.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve MacDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
All right, you got this one.
I do. All right, welcome back to Grok Talk. Not Grok Talk. That's my show, Grok Talk. I was going to say, I'm not Keith Hansen, but this is Granite State Live, and that is Julian Acciard, and we are here to talk to you about all kinds of different topics. If you want to be part of the show, 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-TALK. The phone lines are working. I would like to thank Juan, our engineer, producer, and beekeeper, for all his great work so far in the show today. If you missed it earlier, I had a bee crawling on my face. That was interesting. But anyway, we're going to move on to something far more interesting, something that everybody thinks they know a lot about, but maybe not as much as they'd like to. And we have a gentleman here to help us with. John Tamny is the author of Deficit Delusion, Why Everything Left, Right, and Supply Side Tells You About the National Debt Is Wrong. He's a political economy editor at Forbes, senior economic advisor at Torador Research and Trading, and editor of RealClearMarkets.com. Mr. Tamny, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
I do too, and you can help us with a lot of things here because I mean, you know, I'm in my 60s, so obviously I've been around. I got a 401k. I've been in politics. I've been blogging for 20 years. I'm familiar with the labor report, and I know what GDP is, and you know, we listen to things about the Fed, and there's a lot of things going on. And right now, the stock market is soaring, and people are wondering, well, you know, what's going on? We have all this debt, and but stocks are doing great. And is there a 30,000-foot view of this that you can give us to get us started?
Yeah, well, let's start from a short view. Can you borrow more at 60 than you could borrow at the age of 20?
I might be able to only because I have accumulated assets and wealth.
Exactly. You're a much safer loan at 60 because you've accumulated wealth and you have assets, you have income that you didn't have at 20. Well, governments are no different. The only difference is governments are populated with people who don't spend their money nearly as carefully as you do. And so we have a federal government that's got $37 trillion in debt. Well, why does it have that? Everyone focuses on the debt instead of why it's been able to accumulate so much. And that's the argument in my book. We have lots of debt precisely because the federal government takes in enormous amounts of money now. And much more perilous and related to the previous guest because of the future wealth creation, which will be beautiful thanks to AI, federal revenues are set to skyrocket. And so as a consequence, anyone will line up to lend to an entity that keeps taking in more money. And so I'm trying to make a case that until we reduce the dollar inflow into the federal government, we will continue to see soaring deficits and an ever bigger government.
So it's about taxes.
It's about taxes, but specifically it's about the overtaxation of rich people. It's not just that it's immoral to tax the rich more. It's even more immoral because a tax on Jeff Bezos is a tax on you, me, and everyone watching. And it is because every dollar that the government takes in gives the government more control over the economy, a greater power to centrally plan resources. And so we need to reduce what Jeff Bezos pays in taxes so substantially so that he can invest more in real companies that we can work for and that will grow the economy. But also because if his tax bill is exponentially less, the willingness of lenders around the world to lend to the U.S. Treasury will logically decline.
There's obviously going to be some tension there, a little push and pull from the people who are on the let's tax more side. How do we sell that to them?
Well, it's interesting. We sell it in two different ways. For one, isn't it odd that Republicans so often say, we want to raise your taxes by lowering your rate? It's the Laffer curve. Now, look, I love Arthur Laffer. I think he's a great man, but I think the curve has been perverted. Since when is it a good idea that the federal government brings in more money? And since when did we start believing that if they have more money to spend, that they'll actually shrink the debt? So we've got to convince Republicans that it's not a good idea. That should be pretty easy.
So is there a... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hate big business. They hate big business. They want more competition. What could create more competition for business than if Jeff Bezos is investing tens of billions of dollars more each year in new companies that will compete to knock the best and brightest off their perch, or just giving it to government to waste?
Well, I think
it works for both sides.
Government's never going to be a disruptor in the marketplace other than in the way that it takes control of everything and then stagnates it. So that's a pretty simple way to explain it to people. Government is lethargic. It's glacial. It buries everything in procedure, and you can't get anything done. You're pretty much, and all your money gets wasted all the way along the way. I've worked in businesses. I've run businesses. I understand streamlining the process, getting the government out of the way, getting people who are causing trouble out of the way. And I think Mr. Trump is trying to do that in one form or another, at least as best he can, with a lot of resistance. But, as the stock market rises, as the economy sort of, it's a little better, but does it feel like it's stalled a little? I mean, are we waiting for something to happen?
Well, you never forget an economy is just a collection of individuals. And so look at it in the sports way. For a time, Mac Jones, the former Patriots quarterback, was having a recession. Now he's having a boom.
He is.
For a time, the Patriots were the boomingest team on earth. They're a bit weaker right now, but you gain strength from weakness. You fix your problems and you start growing again. And so I think the way to look at the U.S. is every single day that passes is a new day for entrepreneurs who are suddenly going to transform how we do things. I mean, think about if I'm on 3 years ago. I mean, again, I think about the previous guest. No one had really heard of AI. 3 years later, it's transforming how we do things, how we work, how we use Google and other search engines. It's just amazing. And this is a consequence of new ideas constantly being funded. Most of them will fail, but the ones that succeed transform how we do things. And that's really what my book is about. It's a tribute to entrepreneurs. It's saying government has lots of debt because it has massive taxable access to the most productive people on earth. If it had reduced taxable access, actually the debt would be much lower and entrepreneurialism would be much greater. And so think about that. We haven't scratched the surface of our potential.
So I would liken this to, say, when a bank goes and raises the limit on your credit card, rather than going out into the marketplace and creating a better widget or a better job or a better company where you're growing your wealth and you're growing your purchasing power and you're growing your ability to live a good life because the bank increases your credit limit, you go out and you spend more of money that you don't have. Is that basically what you're saying when it comes to the U.S. government?
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. And so that's why I say spending cuts won't shrink government. For all the reasons you just said, you pay back your credit card and they'll expand your limit. They'll say, see, you've proven to the marketplace that you're good for your debt. And so I'm not against Doge, but let's say Elon Musk had succeeded. $2 trillion in savings. You want to give that to Congress and fresh powder to spend new ways and do it all the while increasing basically its credit limit? I'm saying we're looking at this the wrong way. The federal government takes in way too much revenue now, and it's going to take in exponentially more in the future. And until we arrest that, the ability of government to spend and borrow is going to keep going up, up, up.
So we're indebting, and one of the things I like to harp on is that we're indebting our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to a life of servitude, to a national debt that we'll never pay down, and a spending cycle that we'll never get out of, because we basically keep giving our teenage daughters daddy's black card to go to the mall.
I hear you. Can I try to convince you to another way to look at it?
Yes, please.
The markets keep telling us that the debt's going to be easy to pay off. Notice how borrowing costs for Treasury keep going down, not up. So to me, the real crisis is this. It's right now, but see, we don't know it. To the point made earlier, when governments spend, they just waste the money. So the unseen in the trillions spent over the decades, that's the crisis. Because we don't know all the Amazons, Googles, Microsofts, NVIDIAs that would have been created if they weren't consuming so much wealth. So it's a massive crisis, but we can't see it. What do the grandchildren inherit? They inherit a massively increased government. That's the biggest burden for them. The second biggest burden is they inherit a much less evolved life, simply because we're funding government rather than funding innovators. And so I put the debt way down there. Again, the markets keep saying when in 1980 we had $900 billion in total debt. Borrowing costs for Treasury were 11%. Now it's $37 trillion, and the markets have brought the borrowing cost down on the 10-year to 4%. They're saying you guys will pay the debt off easily, but what we can never get back, thanks to all this overtaxation, is all the innovation that we never saw, simply because you can't see what never happened.
So. There was a segment on CBS 60 Minutes Sunday night suggesting record high stock market levels under President Trump could be a precursor to another crash similar to 1929. This is clearly something people are working on. How is that wrong, and why do you think?
It's wrong because markets don't just crash. Markets are the most informed voting machine in the world. They're constantly, every bit of information is constantly reaching the markets, and they go up or down based on that information. And so when markets crash, that's a sign of new information, something unknown suddenly reaching the marketplace. So when you consider someone like Donald Trump, he's largely a known. There's so much pessimism about him, so much positive about him. The markets are fighting over that every day. That's already priced into the stocks. What could lead to a crash is an unknown. War over Taiwan. I would argue that if the Supreme Court says Trump has a legal right to impose tariffs, that would lead to a pretty big stock market crash. It's the things that the markets don't expect, but that suddenly happen, that lead to crashes. And so 1929, if you look back to it, stocks were going up, and then suddenly it became apparent in October of 29 that President Hoover would sign in 1930 the Smoot-Hawley tariff that was going to impose record taxation on 20,000 different foreign goods. But see, markets don't wait for the event, the signing. They anticipated, he's going to sign that, so they crashed ahead of time to reflect a slower U.S. economy made slower by government taxing the process whereby Americans, the most innovative people on earth then too, were working with the rest of the world on the path to the creation of ever more abundance.
So what are some of the other things about this entire process that people constantly get wrong? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in an economy and in the debate about the economy, GDP, job numbers, all these other little things that come up. What else? Just give a show.
Oh gosh, well let's look at GDP. Huh. So GDP rises when government spends more. Have you ever heard of a more corrupt number than that?
No kidding.
Governments only have money to spend insofar as they have taxable access to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so for government to spend, that's not growth. That's government spending that growth that already occurred. And so GDP is a monument to double counting. Let's add that if voluminous amounts of imports come into the United States, which is a sign from the rest of the world that the U.S. is so prosperous that we want to direct most of our goods and services to the people most capable of affording them. So if we get a surge of imports because we're so productive here, that brings down GDP. Have you ever heard of something more ridiculous? Just the same, if the federal government bails out, think of some pathetic company. What if it brings Radio Shack back to life? If it brings it back to life and Radio Shack starts producing bad computers again that no one wants and bad landlines that no one wants, that would add to GDP. And so the most prominent number in all of economics is a monument to double counting and just abject stupidity about how economies grow.
We're talking to John Tamny, the author of Deficit Delusion, Why Everything Left, Right, and Supply Side Tells You About the National Debt is Wrong. I know Julian's written a book. You've probably written more than one. How do I want to ask this? What's that just... I mean, obviously you felt like you needed to do this. People don't understand it. What was your process for deciding that this needed to be done, that you needed to write this? Just people not getting this side of the debate?
Oh, come on, Julian. We know what it is. It's vanity, right?
Well, it starts out...
I wrote a book.
There's a little bit of that. There's
Look at me.
There's a little bit of being able to say that you're a published author, but it's... I think we all sort of get into it because we believe that there's something that needs to be said that's not being said.
Absolutely. No, it's that. I always tell people who are thinking about writing a book, don't write it because you think you'll get a bestseller. I mean, that'd be great if you could. You got to write the book for you because you feel you've got something to say. Because as Julian, I think, would agree, it's a very lonely process. There are days you get up where you're thinking, oh man, I've got a great book on my hands. But the next day you wake up and you think, oh, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I don't think there's an end point to this book. And so it's an incredibly lonely, sometimes terrifying process, but it's worth it because you understand things better. I like to look at things through the eyes of sports. I remember Brian Billick. He was the coach of the Ravens. He wrote a book about football after he'd won a Super Bowl. He said, I did it because I just want to understand the game better. And I write books because I want to understand economics better.
Mm-hmm. And what did you learn from your book?
I learned, among other things, I think one of the more interesting things I learned is people always say, oh, California, it's just a bunch of left-wingers and they're socialists and everything. But I pointed out in the book that California's got lots of debt because it's the biggest economy on earth. If you take California as a state, it'd be the fourth largest economy in the world. If you removed California from the global economy, the implications for the rest of the world would be staggeringly dire because of all the productivity enhancements achieved through technology in California. And so in one of my chapters in the book, I say, California's got lots of debt, not because it's a left-wing country, not because it's a left-wing state, but because it takes in tax revenue on a level that no other state can, and hence it can borrow exponentially more than any other state. Again, I'm not defending that. Again, I think government spending is a huge tax. But ask yourself, what if Gavin Newsom was governor of West Virginia? Would West Virginia have a lot more debt? No, it wouldn't. And it wouldn't because it doesn't have the genius that California has.
Julian?
Well, I agree with that. I will also say, writing a book is very much a process that puts yourself out there in a way to be judged or viewed or critiqued on a level that nothing else compares to. It is also introspection. I often say introspection is pain, because when you're going through the research process, you're going to be forced with having to look at all of your own preconceived notions, and you're going to see data that's going to conflict with what you thought. You're going to see things that force you to have to look a different way at stuff. When I wrote my book, I went through a lot of stuff that as a conservative, made me question a lot of stuff within the Republican Party and a lot of strategies, tactics, talking points, things that we do. I'm going, we are just as much a part of the problem as the left, and it's because both we and the left refuse to learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, yes, yes. I'll give you an example. I mean, you've got many. One of the ones in the deficit delusion was that I point out that Ronald Reagan, when he got into the White House, he had big plans to shrink government. But what he discovered, to Julian's point, was that every single government program had at least one Republican constituent in Congress that was going to vote for it. And so what's the lesson? It's what Julian says. Republicans are very much as a part of the problem. They rely on big government too, especially the elected Republicans. But it also had me concluding in the book that spending cuts won't work. Because even if you can get spending cuts, which is rare for all the reasons Julian says, I don't want to give Congress fresh powder to dream up new ideas. Medicare began as a $3 billion a year program. It's on the verge of a $1 trillion a year. Spending cuts, I argue in the book, would actually lead to bigger government, not less. And for me, I've been arguing for years, spending cuts. No, I reject that now. I don't think they'd work. I don't think they'd shrink government.
So how does the government consume less money if it doesn't get smaller?
Well, let's look at it this way. If the three of us save $1,000 this week instead of spend it, does the $1,000 not get spent? No, it's spent. It's just loaned to someone else. It's directed to someone else. So if the federal government reforms Social Security and Medicare, two programs that I don't like, will that shrink government? No, it will just give the government trillions to spend on new ideas that can grow, and that will attract constituents on each side as they grow. So I argue in the book that keep Social Security and Medicare, not because you like them, but because they limit the ability of Congress to dream up new programs, as does all the interest payments. To me, these are the three biggest barriers to government growth. I know that's odd and counterintuitive. And so I'm saying keep them around so that we can have a discussion while they're consuming ever more of the government budget and its borrowing and all that. Keep them around so that we can have a real discussion about actually doing something to reduce tax revenue in the future, so that we're not as good of a loan as we are right now. I know that's incredibly counterintuitive, but look at what's happened over the last 45 years. Again, $900 billion in debt, borrowing at 11% in 1980. Now we've got $37 trillion and we borrow at 4%. That is the markets telling us that in 10, 20 years, especially because AI is going to supersize an already massive economy, the size of government's going to grow because tax revenues will skyrocket unless we really bring down taxes, not Laffer curve, but actually bring them down. And it tells us that the deficit at $37 trillion is small to wherever it's going to be.
So the solution is bring down taxes first, shrink government later. Not the other way around. Yes. Because if you shrink government, you just free up dollars. I'm saying if you actually reduce taxes so low that government revenue started to decline, watch two things. Okay, for one, the economy grow because all this wealth is staying in the private economy. But watch as lenders start saying, well, the U.S. is not as good of a loan now because they're committed to reducing the flow of dollars to Treasury. And so we're not going to lend to it as readily as we have. And so you'd expand the economy while actually shrinking government. You're just not going to shrink it with spending cuts.
simply because the money is someone is going to speak for that money. They're not going to burn it up. They're not going to give it back to us. And so what do politicians do? They spend it. They'll just come up with new ideas. Let's not give them that chance.
Clog dancing in Liechtenstein.
Hey, I can't disagree. I've seen a litany of studies and grants that the federal government has given to all sorts of universities to do absolutely obscene and ridiculous things. At the beginning of the 2025 fiscal year, I wrote a article reimagining the fiscal year 2025 budget where I got rid of the income tax, capital gains tax. I basically got rid of most of the most popular taxes that everyone knows and can readily just, spout off. And I brought the government to parity, to just parity. No extra, no debt, and I forced us to have to pay down our debt at the same time. So we had X amount that we were required of taxable revenue that went towards the actual budget, that went towards our actual expenditures, and then we had the rest went towards servicing the debt.
I love it. With just going back to the one thing you said earlier, when you pay down your credit card, they usually expand your limit. Mm-hmm. And so I still want exactly what you've done, while saying, again, I don't know how you say it, but you have to make it clear that, this is going down, down, down. There can be no more Laffer curves in our future where, again, let's cut taxes and grow the economy so that we can get more revenue. We have a too much revenue problem. That's exactly what you've said. And we've just got to make sure that we're not on the path to raising more revenue in the future.
Interestingly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's just the path to more and more debt every time.
Well, we're here in New Hampshire. They recently got rid of the interest and dividends tax. They've been lowering business taxes systematically over a number of years. We do not have a sales tax or an income tax. And they have often said what you often hear, which is if we lower the tax, we'll get more revenue. And initially we did, but lately we haven't. We've actually been getting less revenue. And I just found that really interesting. And I know they want to keep cutting taxes. And I don't know if they're thinking this the same way you are, but the parallels seem obvious to me now.
Yeah, so now we have to actually shrink government, which is the part that gets uncomfortable because, like you said, like we've covered, every single one of these programs has a Republican constituent it pulls on their heartstrings. Whether our state reps don't really get paid, and our state senators don't really get paid, so it's more about pulling on their heartstrings than it is anything ideological.
It's so true. Let me try this on. I'm curious what you guys think. I am not for a second against zero state income tax. And I think an income tax is the worst way to raise government revenue in the first place. Here's my one problem. I want the biggest tax bill for Americans to be in the cities and states they live in. Mm-hmm. And I want the smallest to be federal. And I'm still bothered by this. When Republicans say, well, the SALT tax subsidizes California. Oh, nonsense. California is harmed by all that government spending in the state. And I want to keep all of that California wealth in California. I don't want it going to Washington, where think of West Virginia. I'll go to my grave saying West Virginia wouldn't be so poor today if so much wealth from Massachusetts and California and New York hadn't been flowing to West Virginia all that time, propping up what doesn't make sense economically. And so I like the idea of SALT. I just want to make it a SALT credit, as in if Californians want lots of government, keep it there and deduct it against what goes into federal so the federal government doesn't have the means to do the damage that California's government is doing to the state itself. But I can't convince anyone on our side of that. They say, oh, you just want to subsidize red states or blue states. I said, no. I want them to keep their damages local. But everyone keeps saying, no. We've got to make sure that money's getting to Washington.
All right. We Reached the end of the segment. John Tamny, author of Deficit Delusion, Why Everything Left, Right, and Supply Side Tells You About the National Debt is Wrong. Where can they get your book, sir? Everywhere?
Oh, on Amazon. Buy several copies, give them out to friends, tell friends. There's lots of other books to buy.
Everybody needs
I've got a wife
coffee
and two
table.
kids, all that. Yes.
All right. Thanks, John. Thank you very much for being here today. We hope to have you back. We can talk about more economics or whatever else. And you have a great night.
Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. All right. That's the end of that segment. And this is Granite State Live. I got that part right. Coming up in the next segment, we have, I'm not on the right page. Who's coming next? Julian, help me. Help me. I don't have it right.
We have a couple Cuban immigrants who are going to be coming on to discuss warn of the perils of socialism and why Democrats love illegal immigrants so damn much.
All right. That's coming up next. This is Granite State Live. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve MacDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to the final segment of Granite State Live. Once again, we're going to have another fire conversation for you. We have David and Humberto Cancio, Cuban immigrants, who are going to explain, they're going to warn us of the perils of socialism, and they're going to explain why Democrats love illegals so damn much. I am often, and I've said it quite a bit, I am a contender that the reason why Democrats love illegals so much is because we have an American way. American way of an exceptionalism, an American culture, and mass immigration of both legal and illegal kind. If you get enough people who come into a country and settle in enclaves rather than assimilating into the population and bringing the best of what they got here to make America better and to make themselves better and using the best of what America has to offer, you can create a society that refuses to work together. All of a sudden, it's the haves and have-nots. It's the division, because when you have scarcity of resources, it drives division. Now, and this is what you call replacement theory. Now, we have often heard of replacement theory being, trying to replace white heterosexual males, right? No, that's not it. It is trying to replace the average everyday American with enough people who aren't Americans, who are willing to trade liberty and freedom for something in their pocket. Up next, here with us on the line, David and Humberto Cancio. They're the authors of Gabriel Locke, Bound by Law, and they're here to talk to us. They're born in Cuba. Humberto was born in Cuba in 1953, but immigrated to the U.S. at 6. And David was born in 1991 and has lived in both Florida and North Carolina, graduating from NC State with a major in Spanish. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. Please warn us of the perils of socialism. Maybe we might be able to stop it from coming here.
Well, actually, communists usually enter a society under a false pretenses. When Fidel Castro walked into Havana on the 1st of January or the 2nd, they were all carrying guns and rosaries. And believe me, they were really trying to convince everyone that they were good Catholic boys. And they turned out to be communists. Why? Because they always come under false pretenses. Your gentleman in New York City is coming under false pretenses. He has no intention of making anything affordable. He has every intention of making everything ruined. How does he do that? Well, he institutes rent control, and he takes New York back to the 70s, where owners of buildings could not afford to pay for their own building because the rent was not giving them enough income to pay taxes and so forth, and they walked away from the buildings. And there was an absolute blight in a lot of New York. And this is what you're facing. Cuba, who has a fertile soil, 95%, because of the communist system, they don't have any food. And in a country where everything's fertile, that's inconceivable. But you walk into the government stores, and what you see is a lot of empty shelves. And that's really what communism, Marxism brings. Nothing else.
I 100% agree. I often say that communism, Marxism, in all of its forms brings death, poverty, and destruction under the guise of nicely worded phrases and hope and change. And we're gonna use the Democrats have been doing this for years. They use a calculator of sorts that uses the positivity and negativity ratings of words and strings them together in such a way where you feel really, really good, but you don't understand shit that they actually said because they didn't say anything of any value whatsoever. And what they really mean is you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. And if you're not happy and you say it out loud, we're going to shut you up.
Yes. In Cuba, they did a lot of shooting, a lot of dead people. Mm-hmm. I know my father was sitting on trial for treason and escaped by a miracle of God. And the prosecutor requested that the court give my father a death penalty by firing squad if guilty, and if not guilty, 10 years. So that's what they bring.
Yeah.
So I've watched South American country and Central American country after country devolve into socialism over the years. Some of the most beautiful, fertile countries, economically sound, have all the resources to be absolutely fantastic. Most recently, in the Caribbean, we've watched Venezuela under Maduro start to fall. What used to be one of the richest countries in the area with one of the largest oil reserves in the world has now fallen to despotism. And it's looking like we might have to go and fight a war there.
Yeah, and part of the reason for that is, it started with Chavez, really just a lot of those ideologies that came from the left. The Cubans that had left Cuba and went to Venezuela were kind of signaling to everyone, don't listen to this guy, don't vote for this guy. We've all seen this picture before. I feel really bad for them because they left Venezuela thinking that they'd get away from the situation, only to come back to it a couple of years later. But when you look at Venezuela and you look at a country that has nickel, cobalt, oil, gold reserves, I mean, they have all kinds of natural resources. They're at least from a resource level and from an economic potential level, they're one of the most impressive countries, really, not just in South America, but actually in the world. They have all kinds of rare earth minerals, et cetera. And so, how do you take one of the best countries in the world for oil production, and you bring this nut job into the picture, and all of a sudden they don't even have enough petroleum for their ambulances? Inflation's gone through the roof. I mean, anybody wants to pretend that any kind of system like that is going to be beneficial is horribly mistaken. And I think the problem is that people feel so desperate right now, that they're clinging on to anything that they can. And from Cuba to Venezuela to other places, I mean, this is really what we see.
I had the opportunity to interview a woman who fled Venezuela when it was taken over, and they were very wealthy and they had property, and they were lucky to escape with their lives with what they could carry. So I think, I'm going to go find that and rebroadcast it, because, I mean, when you hear it from somebody who lived it in real time, it really shakes you up. And then you look at what happened to this wealthy country that had all these great resources, and what it looks like now, you get a serious balance of just how bad Marxism and communism is for everything, not just for economies, but people.
I think I've often said there's a balancing act and almost a stark division between people who experienced the country before the fall into communism, before the fall into Marxism, and then what happened after. They go around the world telling everyone, don't do this. Look what happened to my once beautiful country. Look how they destroyed it. And then you see the academics. You see the young people. You see the academics, or the people who left before the fall. They go, no, this should have worked in theory. We just got to tweak a few things, maybe shoot a few people, stifle a few liberties.
We shot the wrong people.
Yeah, maybe we should take somebody else's some more property this time.
Yeah, maybe the guys that came in with Fidel should have actually prayed the rosary instead of just carrying it. But what happens is that you have young folks. It's curious because here the young, almost upper middle class kids have caught on to this and have liked it. And that's exactly what happened in Cuba. Mm-hmm. In Cuba, it was a revolution of the middle class, thinking that they were putting something better, and ended up putting something that destroyed the country. And so I look at this, and it's exactly the same. And you look at for instance, New York. Well, they're looking at this Marxist, and they're thinking, but what are my alternatives? Right. You've got a two-term governor that basically killed 3,000 people. You have all kinds of corruptions and abuses, and then you have a very poor. I mean, he's a very good person, but he's not going to make a good administrator that's a Republican. So people are looking at that, and then they say, well, how bad can this young kid be? I mean, he's affable, he's polite, he's funny. That doesn't make for a very good administrator, being affable, funny, and polite.
No, as a matter of fact, I would say some of the worst leaders on the planet often have quite a bit of charisma.
Yes.
We've seen despotism rise,
and all the cult of personality.
Yeah, and they come in on the backs of people who say nice things, as we used to say, whisper sweet nothings in your ear in the wee hours of the morning. But society doesn't need pillow talk. We need truth. And one of the things I find to be so prevalent in middle class and upper middle class people in the United States who fall into this is, one, this misguided idea of well-meaning intentions being worth it to destroy everything that we hold dear, and a misreading of the Bible, because often they use faith and they'll use charity as the backing. Well, the Bible says we should be charitable, and my whole contention is, it is moral to be charitable. It is, but charity is voluntary. Charity at the end of the barrel of a gun, which is charity via the government, because all government is enforced via the barrel of a gun. Charity at the end of a barrel of a gun is not charity. It's theft.
Right.
Yep.
Well said.
Yeah.
Really well said. It's funny that you had, and we want to thank you guys for having put up the image of our novel, but, while it takes place in the 1980s, one of the critical things at that time is seeing all the immigration to the United States and seeing really the perspective of a couple of the clients when they meet with Gabriel. And there's one character in particular at the beginning of the novel. His name is Ernesto, and he's working with Gabriel for the dissolution, of a partnership where he's going to kind of take his own capital and start his own company. And he suffers something really terrible in the book. I don't want to give it away, but he says to Gabriel, he says, when I was in Cuba and the Feudalistas, took everything from us, I lost everything, right? Everything that my family had worked for, that I had worked for, was mine. And then the government came and take it. And then I came here, and now I'm fighting again for things that are mine because I've been wronged. The difference is that, in Cuba, the government, the justice system, whatever you want to call it, the absolute authority, quote unquote, took his possessions and his property. And in this one, he's able to dispute it in a court of law to try to get at least some kind of recompense.
Yeah, the wonderful thing about this country is that we have recourse. In communist countries, you don't have recourse. As a matter of fact, you better shut up and turn around. When my wife came out of Cuba, she was 4 years old, and she came to the airport with a little doll and a nice dress. Not only did they take the doll away from her, but they took the dress. And that's the way the communist governments operate. And as sad as that story is, it's true. So the book also talks a lot about 1980s Miami. And in 1980s Miami was what the United States is today. We had an incredible influx of immigrants. They were mostly legal. And then we had an influence of drugs, and we had an influx of all kinds of people from different cultures, and we had all kinds of influxes of capital to build the city. And we had a very, very outstanding group of people that worked their tails off to create a metropolis that Miami is today. And so we thought that was a great moment in history to place the book, because it really is placing it in the U.S. of today. And we really thought about it. And so all the experiences are there. And as you read the book, you'll see the Cuban experience. You'll see the experience of other countries that ended up in Miami through the clients that Gabriel receives in his office. And that way we thought that it would make the novel not only a historical document, but a contemporary document that really reflects what our society is going through.
Yeah, to put it in a nutshell. Not that I'm long-winded. Not at all. But anyway, to put it in a nutshell, the kind of the reality of the situation. And again, I want to apologize. I just got off a plane, so that's why I've got the backwards cap, and I look like I've got bags under my eyes. It's been a long weekend. But anyway, thank you for having us. The thing in a nutshell is, the best thing that we've heard is Miami became Florida, and Florida became the United States. And I think that adequately summarizes it. Now, the other truth of this is that the situation in the 80s with the Mariel boat lift and all these criminals coming in and everything, Miami had to suffer through that. I mean, there were 3 race riots in the 80s. You had all kinds of issues with people moving in. And the difference was, in that time, when they came here, the vast majority of them were like, you know what? Yes, we might be Cuban American, or we might be this American, but we're now Americans. Let's build a future for our kids. And I guess in the Cuban sense, and I can only speak to this because that's my family, right? And that's the community I grew up in. But you had people who had everything taken from them, so they really lived for their children. It was all about creating a better life for their children. You have people who come in now who were trying to escape, quote unquote, these countries out there that are insane. And instead of trying to provide a better future for their children, they're providing exactly what they supposedly left for everybody else's kids. And that's kind of the issue that we're having. And hopefully we will completely clean this up and get out of there. I mean, we all know this last election was absolutely a mandate from the American people to clean up more than just corruption in the government, but really corruption in our country as a whole, and our communities and everything else.
I sure hope that that's exactly how the average American sees it, is that this last election was a mandate to clean things up. We're conservatives here, so I often lambaste the Republican Party for their apathy and their reactionary methodology. And too often I find Republicans talking a good game but not delivering. And I'm excluding Trump because Trump is legitimately trying, but I find that the GOP in general seems to be trying to wait him out. They seem to be trying to hold on to the 2026 election, watch our majority, diminish so that they can make Trump a lame duck president in his final 2 years in office and be able to go a different way in the 2028 election. Mind you, I don't think that anybody who is not Trump-esque or in Trump's orbit is going to be the presidential candidate in 2028 for the Republican Party. I think that the transformation that we've seen, this America First attitude, is going to translate into generations now, especially as we're going after young men. But I think the thing that I take away from the growth of Miami is quickly becoming the fastest growing city in the United States, and exhibits American exceptionalism and the beauty of what we call a melting pot, where everybody comes here and becomes American. And I wish there were more cities in the United States that would follow that lead of unfettered growth, of unfettered capitalism, of reach for the stars, and even if you don't land in the stars, you'll land in space, you'll land on the moon.
I agree with you. It's amazing how Miami grows. We're living up in Palm Beach, and every time I have to go into the city, I call it the city now, it sounds like New York, but I go into Miami, and I marvel at how many buildings have been up since the last time I was there 2 weeks ago. It's incredible. I marvel at it, and it's because people in Miami want to do well. People in Miami love the city and want to see the fruits of their labor multiply. And there's all kinds of languages happening and everything, but there's no more displacement.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Displacement took place in the 80s, and it was a difficult time, but Miami survived. The only thing, and I think David hit it on the nose, is that everybody wanted to be an American. I'm not sure that's what we got this time. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we didn't get it.
Are you talking about Miami, or you're talking about the country as a whole?
I'm talking about the country, the last 4 years.
Oh, yeah,
the people, the folks that came in.
For the love of God, let's not talk about the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about third world countries emptying their prisons and insane asylums into the middle of our nation?
Wait. Let me handle this one, because I really want to do this one.
Okay.
With the Mariel boat lift, right? When people had to go back to Cuba to pick up their relatives, the Cuban government basically said you can't go unless you take these people with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Except this time, it wasn't that people were trying to get other people and bring them here. It was our government saying, "Oh, you've got your worst? Bring them here. Come on in. Everybody open the door."
Yep.
The National Guard and everybody else, Border Patrol. Let's just everybody stand down. I've never seen a government work in such an efficient manner to destroy the very basis from which it came.
You
And
know,
I've only seen that really in the last 4 years, at least. I'm 34, so there's only so much I can see. But I'm just looking at this going, you're supposed to be representing the people that voted you in, and I know that not everybody voted this in, and this is what it is.
It's funny because Jimmy Carter, the second worst president in our history, he handled. It's the truth.
It's true. It's true. He's bad.
He handled Mariel completely different. He set up camps. He vetted the people. He realized that there were crazies and prisoners and all kinds of things, and they were sent to appropriate places. They built a huge camp in Arkansas where people went to, and they were held there until such time that they were completely vetted. The only people that managed to go directly into society were people who actually had relatives here and could actually sign for them, verify for them, and go through all the steps. So even though it was an uncontrolled entrance into the country, there was a control set up immediately. There was no intent to do that this time. None at all.
No, as a matter of fact, control would have been the last word I would have used for anything that we saw.
And, I'm going to suggest another thing that they did too, which we haven't talked about. All these people that have come in have gravitated toward the blue states because they feel more protected. And at first I said, well, why would they want all these people to come in and then gravitate to states they already dominate? But I forgot. Population determines the House of Representatives.
Yep.
And so what they've done is pack the states that are losing population, California, New York, with new people so they can maintain those states and not lose every single election in the future. And it's a very curious observation. I just think that it's such a plan, it's an incredible plan, and they didn't care because they just wanted one thing, was to perpetuate power and not be locked out of power. God forbid that they come up with an original new solution for any problem we have.
Yeah. An actual solution.
Yeah. Hey guys, I was a Democrat for 40 years, okay?
So congratulations.
Well, one of the things
you reformed.
This brings me to something. California, prior to Ronald Reagan winning the state. Oh, fuck.
B? Oh, B. Did you get bit?
Yep, it got me.
Oh, and it's still flying around. But not for long.
It got me.
We have bees in here. Well, now you've witnessed a co-host getting stung by a bee. And
all right. So I was going to say, prior to Ronald Reagan winning California, California used to apportion their votes directly to the person who won that district. I think that throughout the country, we need to change so each state apportions their electoral votes to whichever candidate won that district, the same way Maine does.
I suppose that's an option. We'll have to think about it because we're out of time, and we have to keep going because I think the engineer has to be somewhere, and he's giving me dirty looks. He is. He's busy. So, David and Umberto Cancio, thank you so much for coming on the program. Hopefully, we have you back, and best of luck with the book. Real quick, where can they get it? Anybody? Amazon, I assume. Everywhere.
Yeah, so you can definitely get it on Amazon. You can get it through Barnes and Noble. If you just type in Gabriel Locke, Bound by Law, you'll find it. And in about a month's time, book 2 will be out.
Ooh,
so we're
great.
very excited.
Something to look forward to. All right, thanks for being on the program. This is Granite State Live. We'd like to thank everyone who tuned in and everybody who's going to watch, not live, but you should watch live because, well, Julian just got stung by a bee. Anyway, thank you very much, and we hope you come back next week. We'll be here. with more conversation and more guests. We'll see you then.